Good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be, and welcome to Distribution Strategy Group's Technology Leader Panel. Today's topic is the role of AI in digital transformation. And what we're going to be focusing on today is less about the use cases of where AI can be applied. We've talked about that in recent webinars that Ian Heller ran and that I ran as well. We're going to be talking today more about how AI enables or supports the process of digital transformation itself. We've got fantastic speakers, Alex Witzpolek from Continuum and Jared Hellenick from Infor to inform us on this important topic. First, I wanted to share a little bit from our sponsor, one of our sponsors, which is Distribution Strategy Group, on our customer experience RX offering. The big idea is if you want to get actionable, highly actionable insights that allow you to tune the experience that your customer has to create a better customer experience, our offering, Customer Experience RX, is the platform and solution to do that. In it, we gather information that measures overall satisfaction, but more importantly, gets to what's driving overall satisfaction. And that's where the opportunity for making changes come in. It could be something as simple as a certain geography or branch needs better inventory, or another branch needs better quote turnaround time, or needs to reduce will call time. Suffice it to say, these insights are powerful. We're watching what's happening with customers that are using Customer Experience RX. Their net promoter scores are coming up, their customer satisfaction and loyalty are coming up. So if this is something that might interest you, definitely reach out to me at Distribution Strategy Group. And now I would love to welcome our guests for the show today, Alex Witzpolek, CEO and founder at Continuum, and Jared Hellenick from Infor. He's a product specialist in the Technology and Innovation Group. Alex and Jared, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Super excited for today.
We've got a very, very rich topic here. The thing I wanted to start off with, maybe Jared, if you could start off with obviously who Infor is and what it's doing with AI, and Alex, we'd love to hear from you and Continuum on this as well.
For sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity and really looking forward to the discussion today. Infor is a global enterprise resource planner, ERP for short, and we specifically focus in on distributors, manufacturers, food and beverage companies, and healthcare companies. So we make purpose-built solutions to serve those four main verticals. And with our role within AI, it's really a couple different three-pronged approach. One, we have a platform, a machine learning platform that's embedded within our ERPs and our digital business platform. But that's only about a third of what you're going to need to make machine learning and artificial intelligence work. We also have an approach where we actually have a data science team that's really specifically built to help our main verticals achieve specific use cases and outcomes by leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence for like predictive maintenance and pricing intelligence. And then lastly, that's very exciting, in October, little sneak peek, we will be releasing our generative AI platform that's not only going to be embedded within our ERP, but also embedded with some of our other edge solutions like warehouse management, our OCR technology, and workforce management, et cetera. So it's really a three-pronged approach. We can help you with the platform, we can help you with the people, and we can help you with what's coming up next, things like generative AI.
Amazing. Amazing. Broad and deep. Alex.
Love it. So, hey, everyone, super excited to be here. My name is Alex Witzpolek, founder and CEO of Continuum. We are the first returns, warranties, and repairs network built for distribution and manufacturing companies. I think returns and warranties are something that every company has to deal with, but it's probably one of the last things you want to have to deal with. You want to focus on moving product out the door. And so we use AI to try in many ways to take that off of your team's plate and streamline this to deliver a great customer experience. And so the ways that we do that, the first thing I think is most exciting is every distributor has so many projects that they need to get done in automation and in operationalizing so much of their business and automating. So in our deployments, so integrating to ERPs and replicating business logic, And so that's kind of the back end side of things when we talk about where does it exist in the product. Yes, there's super exciting pieces there, but how can I get stood up quickly? How can I get extreme time to value, especially in a process that, quite frankly, we don't want to have to deal with? And so when you look at a distribution business, they all handle returns differently based off of a vendor, based off of it's a warranty claim. And what is the logic that exists inside of, quite frankly, probably just a couple people's heads inside of your business? And how do you replicate that and get that built into a technology? And so integrating to ERPs and replicating that business logic to get it stood up quickly and extreme time to value is probably one of the biggest areas where we invest our time in AI. But then you're seeing additional areas like Jared had mentioned, generative AI with the chatbot and releasing that on your website, being able to tap into your supply chain network and identifying if things are under warranty, if they're not under warranty, not off of the data that exists inside of your own four walls, but through the supply chain. So, we can dive deeper into some of the use cases, but we're definitely seeing inside of our own business and then our customers as well. There's certainly a push on AI, which is super exciting in this industry.
100%. And Alex, you were at our most recent conference, and it was amazing how much the tone and the maturity and the sophistication of the attendees at this conference was different from our conference just 9 months ago. So it's changing very rapidly. We could tell by the questions they asked, overhearing the discussions. There was definitely progress, movement from fear to excitement, deployment. How do we do this? So again, today we're going to focus a little more on how AI enables digital transformation. So I want to start off with a big, broad question on how can we discuss how AI-driven process automation, or just AI, contributes to digital transformation in distribution? What processes tend to benefit the most from AI integration?
I can take a first stab at it if that's all good. I think what's super exciting is technology just builds on itself. And we've continuously built from this platform of having cloud, then we have all this data. Now the next question is, what do we do with all this data and this cloud infrastructure? AI and machine learning is just the next natural step on what we can leverage to make better data-driven decisions. And I think that's super exciting because we've spent cloud really became big 10 years ago, building up all this infrastructure, getting the data ready, and now how do we make better decisions? And how can we make these processes more efficient? So I think what we're seeing here at Infor is there's really two focus that we've seen so far. One is the automation of some of these routine tasks like order processing, data entry, workforce scheduling. A lot of these things can be combined in tandem with automation software, but also artificial intelligence to help you make some of these decisions based off of historicals and also some more seasonality type of data entry points. The other area that we're seeing a huge amount of improvement upon is just customer engagement. So not only we're very all comfortable with a chatbot, but an intelligent chatbot that knows your order numbers, knows where your status is at in terms of delivery. Having the ability to almost talk with a pseudo sales rep, that's obviously not real, but a chatbot has been extremely beneficial in what we're seeing. I think the other area is just when it comes to having the individual seller is making them more efficient as possible. How quickly can they turn around quotes and proposals? How quickly can they have the right product recommendation SKUs when they're giving an order? A big part with distributors that we've seen is that sometimes, especially in highly regulated areas, sometimes the right part is going to be determined based off of where you're selling into. North Dakota may have a different valve than South Carolina, and so on and so forth. A less tenured rep may not know that off the jump, but I think there might be more areas that we can help out with. But Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, so we just actually hosted our own webinar around kind of really a mental construct and a playbook for how distributors can get started on AI. And I think the framework that we've we've partnered with other consultants on is just the strategy of you have a top-down approach, which is taking an existing process and optimizing it, right? And you have a bottom up and it's actually flip that. So it's a bottom up where you're looking at existing processes. Let me look at your existing processes and say, what inside of this can we use AI to actually optimize the process that we currently do? And if you go top down, it's like, scrap everything you know about this current department, this current job. How can we innovate what's actually happening inside of this, right? Rather than looking at a CSR job and saying, hey, how can I automate these jobs? Rewrite the job description. What would it look like? And so I think right now what we're currently in is the phase that we're in, and a lot of the people probably likely on this call are in, is we're in this bottom-up approach. We're looking at existing processes and we're saying, how can I optimize this? And step one to that is putting digital exhaust around the actual process. There's a lot of processes that distributors have that don't have digital exhaust around how decisions are made. Where are they made? And that needs to, step one, be encapsulated inside of your tools, technologies, and the systems that your team's interacting with. Once you do that, you can apply AI to actually automate those decision making. And that sets you up for what is the really exciting promise of AI, which is that top-down innovation, where how do we go innovate these departments, these processes, and fundamentally transform the business that we look at today. And I think right now we're just in the building blocks, in the very beginning of really how AI can help, leverage data and insights for the digital transformation.
Can you say more about this term digital exhaust? It's actually new to me.
Yeah, so it's really anything that someone is doing. If you look at a distributor in the way they interact with their ERP, a lot of times what's put inside of the ERP is a baked transaction or a baked decision. But there's things that are happening outside of that, a communication to someone else, an approval process to someone else that is not encapsulated somewhere else. And so you hear so often distributors say, yeah, but we do it this way, and we go over here and we have to email this person, or we go into this system and we check this, and then we can authorize that quote or get our pricing over to this customer. And so it's all of the things that happen before you have a finalized baked transaction, whether that transaction is a return, whether that transaction is a quote, whether that transaction is an order. There are things that are happening outside in other tools and technologies. And so all of the ingredients that go into that decision making need to have digital exhaust around them. And it's like that decision making process of who's involved and how are we getting there, that if you get that into technology, AI can start to learn to make recommendations.
So it sounds like these things that are not part of the process essentially become candidates for being part of the.
They need to be, right? Yeah. Because especially when you're in such a, it's funny because distribution manufacturing is a third of the U.S. economy. Most technology is not built for it. But so much of distribution organizations is today, as we know it, a lot of what happens is tribal knowledge. And so that's where you see the downfall of a lot of AI, is because there's so many things that are happening outside of these tools and technologies. You're like, what am I going to do? Log every single call I have as a salesperson, right? If you're talking CRM. So how do you natively create that digital exhaust? How do you define that, a process that natively integrates that digital exhaust into how decisions are made?
Perfect. So coming back to this sort of process orientation, how do we see AI acting as a catalyst for digital transformation in the distribution industry? Again, in supporting the process.
From where we sit here at Infor, I think the catalyst is trying to remain competitive and trying to understand what's the right direction. And I think to what a lot of Alex spoke about, mapping out the processes, understanding where are the exhaust. That's a new term that I've heard. Thank you for that, Alex. But just understanding where some of those manual areas are and really understanding what is slowing us down and what can help us move faster is a really big area, and trying to really have a top-down approach. But also a big part of it is the people that are on doing the day-to-day operations will know where some of those challenges are. So a big part that I've seen, the most successful people that I've seen with their digital transformations actually go through almost a readiness assessment where they go through each individual business unit, marketing, finance, operations, et cetera, and they mark down what's taking most of their time. What are these click-throughs? What are these processes? And really just having that open dialogue between what the people are doing and then what some of the leadership is seeing sometimes can be different. So I think having that open discussion, and then from there to the point that Alex was making, is just, all right, now where we know where these things are, how can we leverage AI to make this happen and make this work? And you can do it in a variety of different ways and use cases. I think that'd be kind of the first approach, is just mapping everything out, or mapping out as much as you can, and then really focusing in on what are the biggest pain points, what's causing us the most heartache and challenges that are just derailing us from being productive. What are your thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about like the process of digital transformation to get AI ready, there's a couple pieces we talked about. Obviously, the digital exhaust. The other thing is, which Jonathan, I don't know if I'm sure we're going to get into this deeper, but do we have the right team in place that is ready for this? And that's the readiness portion of AI. And it goes back to some of the DNA and makeup of distribution organizations, but making sure that your team is aware that this isn't here to actually replace you, but it's here to level you up so you can have a more meaningful role. I'm not always a huge fan of like Harvard Business Review and those in a petri dish studies, but there was an article that was super interesting when they looked at a specific job function after AI sat behind it. Yes, the number of people it took to manage that process or that role reduced, but what's interesting is the average salary of that employee actually increased. And so I think for the right people inside of your organization, as you're thinking about the process of getting ready of digital transformation and AI readiness, is making sure that you have the people around the table at your leadership group and in these departments that see that future that, hey, on the other end of this process is a job that is more meaningful for me. On the other end of this process is a job that is I'm surrounded with people that really have the same vision for what our company looks like.
Let's shift into this AI readiness discussion. I think this is a really rich topic. So let's start with let's start with talking about the technical infrastructure for AI. We've heard ideas. If you were at the conference in October, Zach Cass talked about solar fields the size of Arizona to support machine learning. That image has really stuck with me. So there's a different kind of technical infrastructure, at least for the open AIs of the world, the Googles of the world, to create these huge, big Gen AI things. But if I think about from a distributor standpoint, what kind of a technology environment, processors, storage, network, software, et cetera, is necessary for a distributor to support AI, whether the technology is internally created or bought from a third party? Alex.
Yeah, so I'd say if you're going third party, the number one thing you need is connectivity to your data, right? And so you need access to data. Machine learning, AI is data hungry, as we all know. And so number one is you need data connectivity. And so there might be, of the attendees on this call, there might be people saying, oh, but we run on an AS400 system. Like, how could we give connectivity to third parties? Well, there's ways with external, a data lake, however you want to classify your data connectivity, a digital twin of your ERP that pushes data every 5 minutes, something like that, where you could put an API wrapper around that system, which now gives third-party technologies access to that. And so there's strategies that very quickly, a company who may still run on old technology could still gain the access or the ability to leverage AI when they maybe didn't think they were ready. And when you talk about like the infrastructure, and some of this is now moving into, if you want to build your own AI models and your own machine learning models, you're probably already partnered with someone that can help you. If you use Outlook, you're with Microsoft. Azure has so many tools inside of it, and this is not just a plug for Azure and Microsoft. Like AWS has it. There's a emergence of many other third-party providers in the cloud, and natively in there, they provide AI tools that you have. So I think the big thing is, and this is a big investment when we're talking about distribution companies who are running on thin margins, from a mental preparedness, you have to be in a position that says, hey, we might need to make an investment in a team member that maybe isn't going to pay off like super quickly. Like, what's the ROI on this in the next 3 to 6 months? Because you're setting up the building blocks to be able to take advantage of AI, whether that's third-party AI or your own internal tools. And so, like the actual technical infrastructure, you need data connectivity, and you need to have it in a modern system. And that could be a digital twin of your ERP. It doesn't have to be your ERP. And I know that's a big hindrance for a lot of distribution companies. Like, we've been on the system for so long. We have so many mods to it. We have so many configurations. We couldn't possibly go move to this next system. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to still execute and leverage internal and external AI solutions, given the construct or the boundaries that may be placed on your current tech stack.
Okay, so this is a great answer. We're gonna go back to the data stuff a little bit later in this discussion. In terms of the infrastructure, Jared, are people needing to go out and buy? Are they needing to double the size of their data center? Or, as Alex is saying, is a lot of it coming from third party? How do you see the evolution of the infrastructure? Again, I just default to processor, storage, network as the key components. How do you see the infrastructure changing for a distributor to support AI?
So I'm going to be biased, but I think the cloud is going to be much easier to get the infrastructure up and running. If you're buying on-prem servers and trying to have SANs, DL360s, whatever you want, that's going to be very difficult to start to manage, because the amount of compute resources you're going to need is going to increase almost exponentially as these use cases become more and more embedded. The cloud will offer you a couple of different benefits. One, to Alex's point, you're going to have access to all the latest and greatest tools that are out there at your fingertips, and that's going to make your life a lot easier. But also, number two, I think what's super important is thinking about, how do you want your end users to consume the outcomes? There's really two main ways that I've seen. You can either do it as an embedded widget, that'd be within your ERP, CRM, whatever application you're trying to leverage, or a front-end visualization tool, Qlik, Tableau, Power BI. I think having those pieces ready and being comfortable with them is going to be super important, especially if you want to go with let's just say, an intelligent dashboard. That's going to make your time to value a lot faster, because if you don't have the skills in-house to build out these dashboards and feel comfortable with it, all the results that you're going to get are going to take a lot longer for people to extract really value out of, because you're busy so much time just building the dashboard. So I think having that front-end visualization infrastructure is really important. I would heavily suggest going towards the cloud, because you're just going to have more access. Because, to be candid with you, if we were having this conversation 6 months ago, the large language model leaders was OpenAI. Now it's Hugging Face. Now it's something else. And it's going to continuously change. The cloud will allow you to adapt much quicker than having to be on-prem and focus and outfitting all these pieces of hardware for this one piece of technology that could be outdated tomorrow, unfortunately. So that would be I think some of the key main factors. But outside of just the technology, I think Alex also mentioned the investment on the people side as well is going to be important. The key new term or role is something called a data scientist. This is an individual that has, a understanding of Python, mathematics, but I think the real key that we're missing a lot of times is business knowledge. You can hire someone right out of college, it'll have the first two, but it's going to take time for them to work with your business folks to understand the right questions, to take out their knowledge that they have up here, translate that into a mathematical equation and a formula, and then use that to make it embedded to this machine learning decisions. So it's kind of a twofold approach, I would say. The technology is super important. Like I said, front-end visualization, cloud is going to be super easy, not super easy, but easier, I should say, than on-prem. And then having the right people is also going to be important to make sure you have the right folks in place to take advantage of the technology. And then there's a whole third process of just the actual process of creating the machine learning model that I think we'll dive into in a little bit.
Well, so when we think about different size distributors, let's say we get to 100 million, maybe you're hiring one or two of these data science people. By the way, I taught one of these programs for 7 years, master's program. As I mentioned before, I believe the university I taught in was absolutely average. And the people coming out of that, I would hire 9 out of 10 in a heartbeat. I mean, they're just, these programs are really starting to generate very skilled people. When we go back to the infrastructure thing, if I've got people doing development as opposed to applying, how does that change my infrastructure requirement, if at all?
Sorry, when you have people doing development, like the actual developers versus
Yeah, so
migrating.
I hire a couple of data scientists from University of Kansas master's program, and I have them on staff, and now they're starting to develop, you know, LLM stuff. They're starting to do extreme gradient boosting. They're starting to do deep neural network learning. How does my infrastructure change in that setting, if at all? You might say, hey, it's all on the cloud, or how does it change?
With large language models, you're going to need something called a graphical processing unit, GPUs, which is the reason why NVIDIA's stock has just gone ridiculous.
Mhm.
It just takes a certain level of computational hardware to be able to do that deep learning and large language models. And right now, there's a ongoing battle amongst Meta, JP Morgan Chase, and the rest of the big players to get as many GPUs as they possibly can so they can use those to leverage for large language models.
Mhm.
That's because they want to build out their own data center and they have all the resources in the world to do it. It's going to be way easier for a lot of distributors to get those same GPUs, but not have to have that capital expenditure because these things are not cheap. They're not like a typical Intel x86 architecture for a CPU. It's a different way of going about computational formulas. So having access to it at a click of a button is going to be a lot easier than having to go out and battle the big players in the world to get access to the actual hardware. So that would be, I think, a big push for why the cloud is just going to be a little bit easier. It's not going to be, you're not going to have the amortization schedule like you will with hardware, but you will be able to switch to an operational expenditure. So if you're ready for that type of financial model for your IT environment, I think it could fit really, really well. Does that get to the point you were trying to hit on though, Jonathan?
It does, and I guess I'd be curious about the scale of incremental cost necessary to do this. Like
Well,
if I've got two of these people from University of Kansas on staff, and they're doing stuff in the cloud, am I writing $10,000 a month, you know, SaaS fees? Is it, you know, $500 a month? What happens when we start to do that?
Well, and yeah, I mean, Jared, you'll know this even better than me as far as the scale of the data that Infor is processing, but I think it's probably unrealistic to try to generate completely from scratch your own large language models. Can you do it? Sure. The cost to go do it and the amount of data it would be to say from scratch, I'm going to write my own large language model. There's already,
but there's many other models that these grads from your average state school can do, right?
But I think Jared, I'd be curious your perspective on it. But in a lot of ways, portions of AI is being democratized in the sense that you can actually go take subsets of open source AI models that exist and build on top of it so that you're not owning all of the compute power internally on your own in your own organization, and you're just building on top of that and enhancing it. And I think that's probably the more realistic strategy, which one is from like the actual process like of executing, but then two, the cost of the actual infrastructure as well. But Jared, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, but I think for our customers, not just ours, but anyone in general, when you start going down that path, you start touching on some very gray lines about, am I going to give my data to OpenAI? Am I going to give my data to Meta and to use Llama? That's where things get a little bit funky because you can have that intelligent generative AI chatbot, which is really good, but if it's giving all of your customers' data back to somebody, well, now we have a big issue in terms of security and data regulation. So I think a big part of it is finding the right partner that's going to keep your generative AI platform within your environment and data does not leave to those other large language models. Because it's actually kind of interesting. OpenAI and Azure, they are starved for data. They've scrapped the internet for the last 4 or 5 years getting ready for this. And now, I mean, there's only so much more digitalized data it can read off of. So the next step is your customers' data, your information, your proprietary stuff. So how to protect yourself from that is going to be extremely important, and making sure that whatever strategy you go with, really understanding the regulatory and the domino effect is going to be vitally important.
I think that's why Elon Musk was like, "Hey, we're gonna ban Apple iPhones if Apple, allows ChatGPT, right? Because it's the data sensitivity portion of it that you have to be mindful of when you have partners that are using third parties, or whether you're going to build using third parties internally on your own."
Yeah, I think actually Reddit is sitting on a bit of a gold mine right now because it has some of the most generated, our thoughts into the world. And Reddit for a long time, they exposed all that data as an API for free. Now they're realizing, uh-oh, we need to go public. We need to start making money. So they're actually going to have companies start paying for that because it's such a wealth of knowledge. But it kind of goes to show you data for, I think it was like, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, there was a magazine that said data is the new oil. It still is. And so making sure you protect what you have and not give it so someone else can leverage it's going to be wildly critical.
Alex, we've got a question from the audience I think would be good for you. By the way, some of you have found the Q&A button. Please don't hesitate to jump in with questions. First question is on the data and the connectivity. How does this work, or does this work smoothly with EDI platforms? Many suppliers who there are many suppliers who rely heavily on EDI.
Is this specific? So, I guess, yeah, I think it's Jeanette Baum that asked the question. So if we're talking specific to AI as it relates to this,
EDI,
so
yeah.
yeah. So well, I have my own thoughts around EDI. But I believe EDI is the way that things are going is, I do believe over time EDI, just the natural legacy nature of what it is ripe for disruption. And I do think between API connectivity and the way that you can actually set your data infrastructure up to be able to provide API connectivity now, relatively simply. And then generative AI, a lot of the mapping that goes into EDI and like hey, I need to make my part numbers match and our unit of measures, a lot of that can be done if you have a network deployed AI model to be able to solve for this. Specifically for us, when you think about like what we're doing, connecting the supply chain in the reverse logistics way of checking warranty processes, is we look at it as reverse EDI. Right, it is a reverse of EDI using modern technology, APIs, which so you don't have van charges, pieces like that. And so it can exist inside of the same infrastructure where you may already have EDI working today. It just is a new age way of doing it, and we're doing it specifically for the returns process. So I think that whole world is ripe for disruption and change in the distribution and manufacturing world. And I think AI plays a big role in it, but I don't think you need to abandon your current EDI strategy to get started in this process, right? Like you can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time in this world where you can keep your current EDI infrastructure because that's a big change. You've invested a lot into it, but how do we start to look at some new age ways of transacting with trading partners up and down the supply chain at the same time? And I think that's kind of where you can put a bet in innovation without abandoning your current infrastructure.
I think you nailed it, Alex. I don't really have too much to add on there.
So I think let's move next to the data front in terms of AI readiness. We're going to talk about people in just a moment. I've worked with distributors from 2 million to 30 billion in size. And to a T, every one of them believes their data is a mess and is embarrassed about their data. So conclusion, everybody's embarrassed about their data. What are the requirements for data and data management? How good does data need to be? Does it need to be perfect? Can AI cure to support AI initiatives, whether it's an internal initiative or it's a third-party app?
Jared, I'll let you take it, and I'll add on my thoughts afterward. Just I know the amount of data you deal with is just so much more vast.
Yeah, I think it's a twofold. Perfection will stop you from starting anything, no matter what, regardless, we're talking about AI, machine learning, generative AI. So you don't want that to stop you. I think the big thing, though, is understanding what you have today. Like with most if you're using, let's just say, forecasting, you probably have historical orders. You probably have pricing and promotion. You probably have some sort of calendar and event information at somewhere within your business. I think the key thing, though, is knowing where all those are and then centralized location to put where they are within a singleized data lake. That's really the key thing, is most likely these things are living in data silos. It's putting it all there. And the reality is, for machine learnings, they use data, but to get just a little bit deeper, they actually use something called features. So they use data, but features are the characteristics that make up that data point. And so let's just say you take historical orders. You're not going to use every row and column in that machine learning. You're really just going to need this specific column and this specific row and attributes to make up those features that create the machine learning model. So I would definitely suggest looking at some of the things that you've done and you've just had digitalized for the last 3 years minimum, I would say. But like your forecastings are probably there. Your inventory forecast is probably there. Your sales forecasts are probably there. I think the big first step is just knowing what is, centralizing it, and then working with either your own data science team or a vendor to really evaluate what's missing. And a lot of times it's not going to be as much as you think, and it's probably going to be a lot easier to pull in those other things like product, let's say like product attributes, pull that into a centralized repository, other areas. That's going to make it a lot better. I guess my suggestion would be don't be too afraid to try and fail, because that's a big part of this. I'd much rather see people try and then work with a really good partner to make sure that they can be successful.
Does
Yeah,
this necessarily entail the creation of data lake, data warehouse, data mart type of
It would be
aggregations?
extremely helpful to make that happen, because especially if we're talking about cloud, it's going to be a lot easier. With cloud, you don't even really need like a data warehouse or a data mart. You really just need some sort of data repository that can hold structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. And then from there, your data scientists can pull out what they want, create the features. It's called feature engineering, and that's really what they're going to use. The easier, the faster they can just gain access to the raw data and start making their own features for their machine learning models, the quicker they'll turn around an outcome. So I think it'd be really, really helpful, instead of them having to go to this data mart and then this data silo and then this data lake. That's just going to take a lot more time to create features for these models.
yeah. I think Jonathan did too. So if you want to build your own models internally, you probably do need some sort of data lake or data repository to do exactly what Jared was talking about. Like you need, because you need, structured data, semi-unstructured data all in a single location, rather than trying to pull it all together. Like you might struggle to find someone who gets really excited about being able to try to manage all that. Oh yeah, and then they're trying to build AI on top of wrangling your data. But that's just getting data in a single place. It's not saying your data needs to be clean, right?
Mhm.
So I think if I wanted to clock back, I've been in distribution for almost 14 years now, always on the technology side. But when I started in technology for distributors, the conversation was consistently, well, we can't get value from this product because our data is not organized, right? Our data is not tagged the way it should be. Our product categories aren't segmented accurately. Any of these things. What every distributor has is they have a ledger of what do they sell, who do they sell it to, and when do they sell, right? They have that. And then out of the back of that comes an invoice. And that invoice is how much did we charge them, right? When was it triggered? And so they have this level set piece of data. From there, if you have the right partners, if you're going third party, these technologies will actually help you get your data in order and maybe come surface things to you that you don't have, right? Naturally, in two different ways. One is by you self-identifying, oh, we could enhance our value if we started to do this with our data. Two, with the technology that's actually coming to you and saying, well, hey, this is not tagged, so teach me. And so it starts to learn those things. Oh, how would you handle this? And so I think it really comes around like your data doesn't need to be perfect, but you need to get started, because a lot of distributors will say, well, if our data was perfect, our value would be greater. 1000% accurate. That will always be a truth. If your data was more clean, you will get more value. But it's like, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, it was 50 years ago. Well, when's the next best time? It's today. And so if you think that you're just going to start on getting your data clean, but you have no drivers to do that, you're probably not actually going to get going.
And just to add on to that, Alex makes a really good point. It's like you will learn where the gaps are very quickly. Your data science team will know almost immediately where the gaps are, which will help you create a roadmap and help you understand what do we need to do, where can these data sources be found, do we even have access to them? So it really helps your strategy, at least at a bare minimum, to know what the gaps are and then what's a move forward strategy. So you can get to that close to perfect. You'll never get perfect, but you'll get as close as you can to the accuracy and precision that you're looking for within your machine learning model. But you got to start somewhere.
Part of what I heard from both of you here is the idea that AI can actually improve, cure, fix, make up for gaps in the data. I think the word you used, Alex, was wrangle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it should do that, right? Especially whether it's transactional data across trading partners, it's learning it, and then, well, how can you get your like super in the weed detail? You cut your vendor calls part number ABC, you call it 1, 2, 3. You don't have any cross references built for that, but your team is operating within that confines today. They're mapping it already through tools and technologies. Are your tools and technologies watching and learning, and can they provide that back to you? It's just like a very rudimentary example of that. And so and this goes to the digital exhaust. Is there a digital exhaust around the decisions that your team are making in your tools and technologies? And then you can pump that data back into whatever your source of truth is. So that's a very rudimentary example of ways that technologies can start to actually wrangle your data. So I think it should be helping you clean your data, certainly, or you probably just have a data repository of whatever you're using.
As we start to think about people, I think there's a couple of different aspects. One is, what do we need to actually do AI, whether it's third party, in-house? And the second is the readiness of people in the company to receive AI, to the culture, the change management, the security to do AI. Let's talk first about the cultural piece and readiness to receive AI in the organization, what you've seen there.
What we've seen being the most successful is not having these projects be siloed to just IT. When it's just an IT project, that's kind of what it turns into, is the science project. IT delivers their examples to the business stakeholders and say, okay, that's nice. When we really have effective projects here at Infor, it's when we not only have IT, they're obviously mission critical, but also who are the stakeholders that are going to be impacted from a demand forecasting use case? Who are the stakeholders going to be impacted from a pricing intelligence use case? Get those folks in the room, because they're going to be extremely important, because they're going to a good data science team will have to interact with them and understand how are you making decisions, because they're going to need that same type of thought process to put it into their machine learning model so it can make decisions for you. And a big part of having this be successful is when that result comes out and the salesperson or whatever inside rep you're working with, they have full-fledged confidence and trust that their knowledge, their insights have been put into this outcome. It's not something that just came out of left field and they're just trying. this is something that they can actually see their own thought process as it comes up with a recommendation or a prediction. And I think that makes a really big difference from the successes and failures we've seen with our projects. When it's just IT, business is slow to adopt. When it's IT and the business units that are impacted, it's way more successful, and it's usually a lot more accurate and can get you a faster time to value.
Yeah, I mean, I think the IT silo one is a huge one. That's a really good point. I think you brought a lot of good points up there, Jared. What I will say is so much of what we're doing with AI is it's really automation. It's automating decision making, it's automating processes, it's automation wrapped in with AI. And here's I think what I've found, right? Personally, other people may have different experiences, but I think the number one thing is people need to be okay that the way they do it today may not be the best way. So if you automate a bad process, you're just doing a bad process faster. That's counterproductive. And so what the most ground level individuals inside of your organization need to be okay with is that, hey, I can't remember what the law is called, but it's like, there's a science experiment where people do things the same exact way all the time. And then they're like, ask, why do you do it that way? And you're like, well, because this person did it this way. And the root cause of why you did it that way no longer exists. There's a lot of that in distribution and across processes all over the place. And so what might surface as an outcome of this is actually all these steps and these processes that we take are actually unnecessary. Right? We could actually streamline this by doing the process completely different. And AI could surface some of those. And so rather than just kind of surveying your current team and saying, how do you do it today? And let's learn it and let's take that and let's train it on bad processes. Let's actually say, let's take a best in class process and let's actually look at doing that. And if we did that, are there actually gaps in that and are there holes? And so a lot of that is a between the ears conversation or transformation that needs to happen throughout an organization. And it really starts with getting the individuals on the ground floor adopted and okay with that. And that's probably the hardest piece. And so if you try to just push it top down, you may struggle. Like this is the big piece of, hey, we're not going to continue to do things the same way that we've always done it. Things will change and we're okay with that. And that has to be a cultural transformation first.
I think inside all of this, there's a bit of a reptilian brain thing going on for people in the organization, which is I might be automated out of a job, and then they go to death fears and where all the reptilian brain stuff goes. We had a guest, Travis Malakar from Millcraft, a few months back. He actually talked about hiring people who are amenable to change, to organizational change, to being willing to use AI. So he's actually starting from the top down in the organization, with that design in mind of, hey, we're I don't know, mid-market, $100 to $300 million distributor in that space. And that's going to be part of how we build a culture. So on the development side, as we think about, we've broached on the topic here a little bit. Different size organizations are going to need different size and function, internal capabilities. So if I'm a $25 million distributor, I probably don't have a data analytics person on my team. But as I start to go up in size, that team scales as well. I wondered if each of you could talk about what you're seeing on the either AI, advanced data analytics, at different sizes.
Jared, you want
Yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead.
let me get off. So from what I'm seeing is there's three main models of how people can consume this technology. DIY, which isn't going to make sense for anybody, not anybody, but for those mid-size. Then there's working with the vendor, but then there's this newer niche that's being created, which is purpose-built SaaS applications that are really, really good at this one particular use case. And I think for a lot of those mid-sized distributors, that could be a really, really beneficial place to start. I don't have any off the top of my head because they constantly seem to be changing, but it could just kind of be working with, okay, we have a pricing problem, we have a forecast problem, we have an inventory problem. What is one vendor that they don't try to boil the ocean, where they do this one thing really, really well, and that's where we view our most impact? That's a really good way to start. And that ecosystem is constantly changing and developing. I would be cautious to really do your due diligence with those individuals. Goldman Sachs, about a month ago, maybe even less, came out with a scathing report about the current state of AI. Some people are masking linear regression problems and statisticals and just calling it AI. That's not very cool, but they are. They're just trying to put kind of like blockchain. We had a lemonade company, they called them Lemonade Blockchain, and look at that, it worked out for them. Be very careful with some of those vendors and really do the due diligence and understand the thought process and the mathematics behind what their model is and what the IP truly is you're buying. But I think that's a really nice way to go about it. To dip your toe in is just like, okay, we're going to start with an email summarizer platform, and we're going to start doing more content generation with them. It's a nice way to start in without diving into the deep end of the pool, but I think that could be an easier way to start. But like I said, please do your due diligence and really ask the tough questions of your vendor to make sure that they are who they say they are, which is, I think you could probably applicable for any technology, but specifically with AI right now.
Yeah. I think, I mean, that's
Yes.
that's the challenge that distributors face is in this industry. The rich get richer, right? The more money you make, the more money you have when the way that margins compound. And so if you're a $3 billion company, you can invest in a team and building your own models. I think the dollar threshold, and again, this probably depends by vertical based off the margin profile, but the 250 million is where you start to see people have their own teams roughly, where they're like, hey, we're building out a team or a couple people that are going to be dedicated to building our own models or having, building our own data lake piece. Could get a little south of that, 150, but for everyone else, it's like, how do you set the table with the right partners around you and do those partners play well together to be able to push data back and provide the insights back in my organization? Because there's, for example, like, there's order automation platforms out there that are pretty cool technology now that are coming out as far as for PDF order processing. There is now more tech. I had a LinkedIn post about this the other day. There's more technology being built now specifically for distribution manufacturing companies than I've seen in the past 10 years, right? Just in the last year, what I've seen. And so I think we're starting to see more and more technology be built specific for this industry, which is important, because if you try to go to some vendor that doesn't know this industry, it's like, good luck, right? Your model's built to be able to handle multiple line items, different units of measure, right? All these unique complexities. And so I think for the sub 150, I don't know the exact dollar amount. It's going to be tough to be able to justify building a team out and building your own AI models. It's like you can partner with the right people to go solve some of your biggest problems. And then can they set up the infrastructure so you have the right access to the data that you need, that you want out of it?
Okay, so I'll see if I can summarize. For a lot of it, there's going to be third-party applications, like you mentioned, the order automation, the quote automation. There are a number of these applications, and many of these were featured at our AI conference. As you start to go up market in size, you may start to have an internal capability that can do specific requests for the organization. But for, again, the exact point where that happens could vary. We had a question that related to this. Would it be better for a company to outsource their AI programming or create or expand an AI department? And I think the answer to that probably is going to be similar to anything you'd say on other development. There aren't a lot of distributors below $100 million that do a lot of software development, AI or otherwise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be a similar answer for either one. I think we've got time maybe for one more question here. Ian says, what role does AI play when it comes to using product data in digital transformation? Specifically, does AI help you organize your product data, or do you need to prepare your product data in advance in order to use AI tools effectively, or is it both?
I hate this answer, but it can be both and it depends. So if you have like a product lifecycle management tool, you can get a lot of good information and data out of that. But if you don't have those type of toolings that are creating that data in-house, then it's going to be a little bit difficult to find it. Alex, what are your thoughts on that though?
Well, it's so broad, right? Because I mean, your product data, well, is that your hierarchy and the way that you're categorizing things? Is that your attributes that you're talking about for your PIM? So I think it like you take the concept of product data. It's like boom, that's one piece, but you can take it in so many different areas. So I think you have to like the first thing is segment like what part of our product data are we looking to enhance? But I know like AI is playing a huge role in PIM data for products, right? Like massive amount of a role that it's doing to be able to automate PIM data, which is obviously going to push to your e-commerce and networked PIM data. So it's actually taking the amalgamation of the industry. I personally think AI is going to struggle for a while to categorize your data into a product hierarchy, but I know that there's companies working on it. So I think the answer is like yes, kind of to Jared's point. It's like yes, it can play a role. You're gonna have to do some things manually, but like all these things are solvable with AI. Like it's just is there someone out there that's like, weird enough or like I want to focus on product hierarchy and use AI and build a whole company and focus all my time there, right? Same thing with like us with the returns and warranties. It's like, why did, we decided to spend all of our time and energy on how do we solve this one problem the right root cause way. And I think there's going to be more and more. We're going to see an explode. I think we're going to see a lot more new tech built for distribution manufacturing companies soon because there's a lot of investment being made in this industry.
Gentlemen, thank you for an absolutely rousing discussion here today on AI and digital transformation. I wanted to give our audience a heads up about a couple of topics we're covering in the next 2 weeks. August 7th, we have a wholesale change program featuring Wes Smith, President and CEO of the National Association of Electrical Distributors. The main focus of the discussion is from energy policy to talent, industry insights with NAAD's Wes Smith. And I can tell you, Wes is one of the absolutely brightest minds in that industry. It will be a fascinating discussion with Wes. The following week, August 14th, same time, the discussion is a technology leader panel, how AI can drive sales, productivity, and profits. So far, we have Chris Van Ittersum from the CEO of Supply Mover. We encourage you to sign up and attend both of those and have a great day. And thanks again to our panelists, Jared and Alex.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.